Hello there. What is going on, everyone? We are asking the question today, is Atomic Mass Games becoming more and more like Games Workshop? There have been quite a few changes to some of their practices and some of their plans for games like Star Wars Legion that have been making people draw this comparison. And over the course of the last year, there's been more and more comparisons to be made. So I thought it was time to bring about the discussion, whether it's from gameplay, rules changes to prices. There's definitely the two are harder and harder to tell them apart, it seems, other than the fact that one is Star Wars and the other one are wars in space, right? Wars amongst the stars. We're asking that question today, and not necessarily saying if it's a bad or good thing, but really just drawing the comparisons because there are quite a few, and they've been kind of building over a while. If you guys are new here to the channel, we do talk a lot about science fiction, space, board games, miniatures games, and everything in between, and would love to have you stick around. We are doing a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway right now, and all you have to do to enter to win that is to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos letting me know what you think about these recent changes with Atomic Mass Games, GW. Do you think that this is a big game changer? Maybe it's not a big deal to you. Maybe it is a big deal to you. Maybe you feel strongly about it one way or the other. I'd love to hear down in the comments section below. Plus, you can check our links in the video description for like Discord, join our Discord, keep the discussion going there, other social media links, all of that good stuff, or Patreon if you want to jump in there and get access to some battle reports early and get your name in the credits and all kinds of other stuff, Discord roles, all kinds of cool stuff. Let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so one of the first things that I thought was interesting is that their points have been a little bit more comparable to GW points. Star Wars Legion was at an 800 point format for a long time, which didn't really, it wasn't a well-rounded number. It was just sort of the number that Fantasy Flight came up with. Fantasy Flight, used to use like 400 and 800, for games like Armada and Legion. Although X-Wing was 100 points, so they kind of just picked arbitrary point numbers and when they announced this new edition, or this new refresh, or this new version, but it's a new edition. It's the second edition of Star Wars Legion that they're launching. They had said that this was going to be at 1,000 points. Now, I think that's a good common sense number. It's probably easier to balance things when you're looking at 1,000. You can see, oh, this is easier to say this is 10% of a list, this is 20% of a list, or so on and so forth. But that's also, like GW games tend to be like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, so that was like one of those things that drew a little bit of comparisons. And so I think that's an interesting tell. I think it is also because of the fact that I think Star Wars Legion was created after the partnership between GW and Fantasy Flight kind of broke apart. Because again, if you guys have been playing these games for a long time, once upon a time Fantasy Flight Games, which is owned by Asmodee currently, Fantasy Flight Games used to have a relationship with Games Workshop, and they used to make games in the Warhammer universe. There was a card game, there were board games, who knows what all else was planned that didn't actually come out. So it's very interesting to think about, after that relationship was broken up, that and some of these games were a little bit newer too, that all of a sudden Legion came out in a very similar scale to 40K, and a lot of people were saying that it was like a direct competitor to 40K, and it certainly kicked off with a really big bang, and bringing it a little bit more closer to 40K may be one of those things that it was meant to do that. Another thing is, talking about recent interviews, there has been some revelations from Will Schick that have said that the cards and all of these new card packs are not going to be required. They're going to be optional card packs. As somebody who plays Warhammer Age of Sigmar, it's like the same thing. When they have the new editions come out, there's new War Scroll packs, and they're basically the cards. Right? They call them different things. GW has different nouns for everything. Oh, you call that a fork? Well, here it's a war sticky madooter, or something like that. But no, it's funny though. So the cards are going to be optional in Legion, and this is really interesting. And again, I think it's a good thing. Especially since so much stuff has been changing. We've kind of been in the habit of a lot of errata hitting the game, and lately it's been so much that I stopped using cards a while back because, again, the cards were always wrong. And cards are meant to be like a quick reference, and sometimes they're critical. But if you have everything printed out, like that's one of the things I do is I usually just print out my list. Then that works. If you have if you have cards, that works great too. But the problem is a lot of times your cards get updated and they're not accurate anymore. And oh, this guy lost this keyword, he doesn't have that one, or the helper text is changed. And they've been getting rid of all the helper text also with the new edition. But the cards are going to be optional. Now, when I say the cards are optional, that's it doesn't mean that you can show up and just have absolutely nothing, because you're going to have some reference material. You're going to need to know what everything does. You're going to need to be able to, your opponent's probably going to need to be able to know what everything does, but also you're going to need a way to mark certain things. So there are certain cards that are harder to just not use. Things like Force Push or HQ Uplink, or cards that exhaust, cards that have a status, cards that have markers on them, things that you need to keep track of. Those are going to be less optional. Now, of course, if you're printing something out and you have, you make tick marks on it, or you use tokens or whatever, those are different ways that you can do that. But I guess we'll have to wait until the full tournament rules stuff comes out. But basically, they've said that as long as you have one copy of something, then you run as many as you want, which is nice, because when I was talking about the expansions and the new Geonosians, and how there's enough models in that one box to make 2 units of Geonosians, I had said something, oh, but you wouldn't have enough cards. So the community pointed out to me and said, well, yeah, but they're also doing multi-language cards in all of the boxes. And I'm like, that's great. So I guess I could run like a Spanish or German or French, version alongside my English version, and then it turns out we don't have to do that anyway. Which is very interesting to me, that one of the reasons that they got rid of the card art and all of this other stuff, and part of this new edition, was so they could have multi-language cards. And then they also turn around and say, oh, but you don't need the cards at all anymore. They're totally optional, which is it's strange to me, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on. That whole thing is very interesting. So that's another thing. But let's talk about other expansions too. Like with the Geonosians. And again, we haven't seen how everything is going to look, but it looks like there's going to be the possibility of having like 2 units worth of something in an expansion, or being able to run a mega unit, or if I'm using like some GW, like a reinforced unit. Again, that's another kind of a GW thing, is running like a 2 of a unit inside of a single unit, so a double-sized unit. I call it reinforced a lot because that's what I call it when I play Age of Sigmar, but the idea of, hey, this is a five-person unit, but I'm going to run it with 10 people, and for like double the cost, basically. And that's one of the other things that they have done with this new edition. Again, something more similar to GW, which, again, just more and more stuff with this new edition. It seems like AMG is trying to be closer and closer and closer to GW. They've always made it pretty clear that they are a hobby company first, and it seems like that's something they've definitely are still trying to do. And I think if you're trying to be known as a hobby company, or being known as a company that has awesome miniatures, GW is the golden standard there. And so I think they're always trying to, like, I equate them to like mountain climbers, and GW is like Mount Everest, and they're like trying to make it to the summit. That's kind of how maybe that's a crude analogy, but that is something that it definitely seems like. Also, with this new edition, Will Schick was talking about the new edition, why they don't call it a new edition. He made some interesting things in like a recent Notorious Scoundrels interview. He had said that it's like yelling fire in a crowded room, and I was like, I don't feel that way at all. I think new editions are a good thing, but I know that some of you guys probably feel differently, and that's where we go into the feedback. I want to hear what you guys think about when you hear a new edition. As somebody who's been playing GW games for only about a year or two, I don't have a problem with a new edition, but I suppose that many years ago it was a little different. There had been times where people may have been kind of screwed over when a new edition came out. When the latest new edition came out for Age of Sigmar, I did have some units that weren't as good, or some things that were going to be fading into like Legends or Legacy or whatever they call it. but for the large part, it was a huge infusion of new content, new rules, and great new ways to play the models that I already have. So I look at new additions as a very good thing because it's injecting new lifeblood into an existing game. However, that's somebody from my perspective of somebody who's newer to Age of Sigmar. If you've been playing by the same rule set for like 10 years, it can be pretty hard to unlearn everything and then learn an entirely new rule set as well. And that's why I always get kind of caught up on the addition term, because it does, whatever you call it doesn't change the fact that you did just totally change the rules. I'm not a big fan of the new rules, although they are still Star Wars Legion and they're still playable. They're still a workable rule set. But I would love to hope that they're going to continue, every 3 years or so with another new edition. And again, keep the miniatures the same. Since the cards are optional, consider updating the cards and update the. They're going to. I mean, it's no different than having a living rule book, except the fact that now we have a line of demarcation, and I can talk about, oh, well, this battle report was taken under version 2. This battle report was taken under version 3. That's why, or second edition or third edition, and that's why the rules were different in those two games, as opposed to just trying to figure out, like, the current rule set is like a 2.6.1.1 effective this date or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a fan of the current numbering and organization system, so they need a new organization system. But Wilshik had said, when you hear a new edition, that equates to saying how much of my stuff is no longer good. And I can understand that sentiment, although I don't personally feel that way. I look at a new edition as a good thing, although there will be some growing pains along with it. That's just kind of the thing, and that's something that comes with getting older. As I am getting older, as I'm growing, I look to these new things, and I always see them as a challenge, because it's very easy to get caught up in the things that are familiar. It's very easy to fear change, and I try, even though I hate change, I try to embrace it and get over that hump as quickly as possible. When a new version of Windows comes out, I'm usually pretty quick on the adopters. Like when Windows 11 came out, I remember being like, all right, really, Windows 10 is fine. I'd go back to Windows XP if I could, but fine, let me learn Windows 11, let me get it out of my system, and and then get used to it. And that's, and I feel like the same thing comes with editions. Learn them, get used to it, and get there. Some are harder than others, some are easier than others, but the more you play them, the more familiar you get with them. Another way that I think they're getting a little bit more like, or potentially getting more like GW, and this is an interesting one, so let me know what you guys think about this one, is they did announce that in the Gamma Workshop that there's going to be a new format coming called Recon, and it's something that you can play when you get one of the starter boxes. Now that sounds an awful lot like some of those new combat patrol boxes that they have for 40k, or for the spearheads for Age of Sigmar. Again, it's like a single faction starter. They said they're about 600 points. It's funny because that's about how many points you get in a spearhead, or something like that. It's very, very, very similar. So the boxes get you about the same amount of points as the GW, as the 40k, as the Warhammer Age of Sigmar boxes get you. And you can play in this format called Recon. I'd be willing to bet that Recon is going to be combat patrol or spearhead or something like that. And if you're not familiar with, it's basically a kind of like what skirmish used to be, except that you don't have to build your army. You're just playing everything that's in the box. It's already a pre-built army. You're playing exactly these guys, and you can't make any changes to them. And you're playing against somebody else who's using another single army starter, and they're playing exactly what's in their box, and they can't make any changes to them either. Think of it as a demo game that the armies are already set up for you. It's a quicker game, a faster game. You can learn it much easier, and it's a good introduction into the game. And this way, if you don't have a full army, if like maybe you're on a budget and you say, you know what, I can get this Republic starter box, but that's all I can afford right now. I can only get the 600 points. I don't have enough to kind of add more stuff and get that full 1,000 points or whatever. That's fine, because somebody else will be like, okay, well, let's play a game of Recon. That's what I'm thinking that's going to be. We're going to have to wait and see. Again, it's unfair for me to say that is a GW thing, but it sounds like it's going to be a GW thing. So I'm not drawing an absolute conclusion there. I'm just making an estimated guess. Let me know. I'm making an estimated wish. You know, so that's what I'm going with there. We'll have to wait and see. But there's been a lot of other little things from time to time. One of the things is the costs also. The costs of the products have been going up significantly. We're now like a Special Forces box is about $60, and that's about what you pay for GW prices. So that used to be one of the things, is that Fantasy Flight products used to be so much cheaper than GW. And now we're seeing a lot of things are about the same. One of the big differences is that AMG doesn't really have like the really big tank, the big, beautiful honking miniatures that are like this big, you know, the Bane blades and the, you know, and the big dragons and stuff from Age of Sigmar. And the kits that are like $150, the kits that are almost $200 and stuff like that, or the $400, you know, knights and things like that. So you don't see those really big models out of Atomic Mass games, but maybe they'll be coming. Maybe the future will hold stuff like that. I think there's definitely room for it, and I would love to see what they could do in Star Wars, especially because the Gungans are rumored to be coming. They talked about that there was another unit that was going to start the whole reinforced, the double-sized unit stuff. I think it's going to be Gungans. I think they wanted to tease Gungans earlier. I don't think they've been ready yet. I think they had to tweak them. That's kind of what it sounds like based on some interviews that Will Schick has given. It sounds like Gungans weren't quite ready to go last year. It would have made a lot more sense for them to be ready to go last year, since that was the anniversary for Phantom Menace, and now they're not quite ready yet. Well, they weren't quite ready at the time. Now they're getting closer. So I think we're going to see our Gungan spoilers at Adepticon. Hopefully that'll also coincide with announcement for at least a hint that Grand Army, a new format, is coming, which, again, GW has had larger formats too. They have a lot of different formats like that. Which would be pretty interesting as well. But then we might see like the Fombas and the big dinosaurs, and maybe some $150 kits, maybe some $200 kits. Love to see an AT-AT Walker. I want to see what they can do with that. I think that would be amazing, and again, would have a great place in a good, large, Grand Army, oversized battlefield. Like, that's what I really want to play for Star Wars Legion. I want to play these massive, crazy, ultimate insanity games of 2 or even 3,000 points. I think that'd be beautiful. We'll see what they announce at Adepticon. We'll be looking forward to it. But those are some of my thoughts on why Atomic Mass Games is becoming more and more similar to Games Workshop. You might even call it Atomic Mass Games Workshop, or AMGW, hashtag AMGW, right? All right. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I will talk to you later. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are amazing and help make this whole channel possible. Thank you so much for your continued support. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. And always wash your socks.